Welcome to Agile tutorial from Simplilearn. I am CMR Chandra MR, a professional consultant and coach, certified Agile Scrum Master, PMP, Prince2 practitioner, ITL4 managing professional, COVID-5 and DevOps. As part of this video tutorial, we are going to understand what is Agile, the basic details one should know about Agile. To understand this better, let us look at a time in the late 90s what was happening with software development firms. So they used to follow waterfall methodologies. So there used to be expression like, sir, you have a problem. So what happened? So our client want a new feature to the software. We are already midway creating the software. We can't add the feature. So what does it mean? So there is a scenario where the change is asked. So why change? Change may be because of adding certain features, removing certain features, modifying certain things already given. What is wrong in that? Why can't we do that change? So now point here is not about doing the change itself. It's about the effort additionally it takes. Cost, money in terms of which is going out, the effort, then the scope which is going to change at the same time. You also need to put more efforts which will delay the project. So now is it okay? So 90s it was okay. Today is it okay? A big question mark. So why is that not okay? So we need to understand that very clearly, right? I knew we should not have used the waterfall methodology for development. So is that an issue with the waterfall methodology? So answer is no. If it is today's scenario, answer would be yes. If it is 90s, answer would be no. So what changed in this 20 years or 15 years? The dynamics of the market changed. The behavior of consumers changed. So if you look at anyone who is using any product, it may be a software product or a hardware, like if you're a mobile phone or a television or any application, mobile application or application used on your systems. The upgradation of the new features and functionality of that is improved more and more, and consumer wants it more. And you have a very less time to respond. That is one thing. Second thing, there is a lot of competition. If you do not respond quickly, competition will take over. So for you to sustain and grow, it is very essential that you understand this dynamics and you need to respond quickly, which was a bit difficult when it comes to approach what is called waterfall model. Now, how do we address this? So what is that waterfall model is all about? Why is it difficult for us? So the methodology where waterfall model is used involves teams following a series of steps and only going forward after the previous steps are completed. So there is a wait time involved. So until the previous steps are completed, only then I can move to the next. So it is a slower thing. It would take certain longer duration. So it is best used in the scenarios where the teams are small and the project is expected to move in a predictable manner. So predictability is very important. When we follow waterfall methodology, predictability. The variation should be as lesser as possible. So what is that predictability I'm speaking about? As I create this product, as a results comes up, if it takes 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, it's okay. So this is how the product would look like. The predictability, how the product would look like, how that particular output would come. So when is that going to come? Is it okay? If I bring that result after 2 years, is that okay? So if everything is okay that way, without any variations as such, very less variations, then it's fine. So because of following waterfall model, uh, what is that methodology? What is that flow? We need to understand that. So requirements gathering and documentation is the first thing what used to happen, which is true in agile methodologies also. But the main difference here is the requirements gathering and documentation happens in detail, a comprehensive one. Now once that is signed off, only then it is moved to the design. Now based on that requirement which is gathered, which is full, comprehensive, then the design will happen based on that. The consideration of process, the products, the people, the environment, then the design happens, which is again a detailed design. Now once the implementation starts, if you find any deviations, the correction needs to be done. Since the design is in detail, the deviation possibility is as less as possible. But the challenge comes up when the dynamics in the market, when the dynamics of customer changes. Customer asks for change, then you may require to do the change. Now, when you want to do that change, you may require to do that change only after understanding what would be the impact of this change in the entire output which you're going to create, which is very comprehensive one. So because of this, it consumes time, it consumes extra effort. So it may be a scenario where the scope of work is reduced as well. Even after that, this exercise has to be done, which will delay the project. So this was okay. So when this model, when things were done, things were taken up for changes, it was okay because the consumer behavior, as I mentioned, there is a lot of wait time for the consumers also. So there was less competition, but today it is not. I need to go quicker. So because of this, what are the disadvantages which has came up to the consumers or to the organization who actually follow waterfall methodologies in today's scenario? So what could be those? So making changes would be difficult, as I mentioned earlier. So then it doesn't focus on end user client, customer perspective value. So today I think more and more we're speaking about creating a value in the consumer perspective, customer perspective. And the time it takes for consumer to realize the value, how long it takes, the more it delays in realizing the values by the consumer, there is a delay in terms of making your product impression better in the consumer's mind. So competition will take over. So your existence will be in bigger threat. So testing phase is delayed until most of the project is completed because it has to follow step by step, wait the things to complete and then testing happen. Then measuring the progress within the stages is difficult. So why is it difficult measuring the progress within the stages? Because the deliverables or the metrics what are defined to measure at a milestone and at a end of the phase to understand whether everything is delivered as part of it. Now let us look at how Agile is going to help us to address these disadvantages mentioned in Waterfall model. So what is Agile? The basic meaning of Agile is to move faster, be flexible, respond to change, etc. But to accomplish this, there are a lot of methodologies. Now, there is something called Agile Manifesto and 12 Principles of Agile, which we need to understand. So, following this, accomplishing this can only help us in becoming Agile. So in 2001, Agile was introduced. So that's where the term Agile came into picture, where people start realizing what is Agile and why should we adopt that Agile methodologies. So while it was introduced, so Agile Manifesto was also released. It's a set of principles used in project management and software development. So basically there are 4 points which we need to understand very correctly, very clearly, so that we can able to understand what is Agile is all about. Right? It enables team to deliver value to their customers with ease. So Agile team deliver work in small but usable increments. Then evaluation of the requirements, plans and results takes place continuously. This allows teams to respond to changes quickly. Now change was one of the scenario what we were speaking about. Now responding to change quickly is one of the disadvantages what we spoke about, and here it is addressed. It is considered to address, that is very important. Now when we respond to change quickly, it is not that I just quickly responded but I did not address that problem or that scenario. It is very essential to address that scenario as well effectively and efficiently. So now Agile is a concept, right? So it has a detailed manifesto based on which all the Agile methodologies are created. So what is this Agile manifesto is all about? So it was created during February 2001. So which details out the values and principles of Agile processes, which says there are some values which is mentioned in the left, which has more weightage compared to the one which is in the right. Now when we say this, for example, let us go one by one. Individuals and interactions over process and tools. So are we saying we don't value the process and tools? That is not the case. Now let us look at what were the typical issues or challenges anyone would have expressed regarding the processes. So delay, maybe bureaucracy, and they cannot have a flexibility to move faster. So basically delays because of the approval which is not happening because of the processes. Now, how do we address this? So, can I eliminate the process itself? Answer is no, because in the absence of tools and processes, none of the things which we can do easily can exist. So, it should be there. Process and tool should be there. The way it should be defined, it should also ensure there is individuals and interactions, encouraged to have that individuals and interactions while having the process and tools. So, next is working products or comprehensive documentation. So when we say comprehensive documentation, as I mentioned in the waterfall methodology, during the requirement gathering, during designing, there is a detailed documentation which is made. So which take lot of efforts in creating those. Now while delivering the challenge, what anyone was faced was the change which is coming up and making changes to these documentations, which is an additional effort. Now if we have a working products, if I have a bigger product, in that a module of that I keep creating every small modules of it and start integrating to the base model. Now I will only focus on the documentation for that particular model working piece which I am going to create in the next iterations. Then my documentation changes are less. And also the way I'm making the documentation is initially I would have a full skeleton of the entire product which I'm going to create, the roadmap. And upon that I'm going to making the detailed documentation for that only for that working piece rather than the full product itself. Then these working piece documentation which I'm going to create, as I create the working pieces, I'm also getting the feedback because I'm doing the interactions with the users, the consumers, the end users. So I get the feedback, I keep making the changes quickly and then documentation will become accordingly. The small pieces of documentation which happens with those small working modules which are created and those are consolidated over a period of time. By the time the product ends, you have a comprehensive documentation. The project ends, you have a comprehensive documentation. So it saves a lot of time. So documentation is important, but the way we accomplish the documentation is one by one, not in one go. Next is customer collaboration or contract negotiation. So any engagement or any relationship or any business, can it happen in the absence of contract? Answer is no, there should be a contract. Now how this contract should be when we want to follow an agile, it should allow the customer collaboration. Why are we collaborating? To understand what customer is required, to understand what customer needs is fulfilled, right? So now this requires a lot of flexibility in the contract itself, so that commercial is one area which gets impacted and there should be guidelines for that also in the contract. So that during the collaboration, during the change, during the effort being put, customer is also informed what is the change which is going to happen in terms of commercial as well as time and everything, so that it is documented in the contract. So there is no confusion. Responding to change or following a plan. Now I cannot have a rigid plan as we were speaking about waterfall methodology, so that we need to go like this only. So based on the scenarios changes, so we may require to change your directions and move faster. So responding to change requires a specific flexibility which is required in the plan, so that I don't have a plan which is very rigid, and that provides some flexibility. That's how I can able to create my plan, so that I can able to move or respond to that specific scenarios which are changing. So this is called Agile Manifesto, and this Agile Manifesto has 12 principles associated with this. Now keeping this Agile Manifesto on 12 principles, all the Agile methodologies have created their own approaches and framework. Now let us look at what are those 12 principles, the Agile principles. So Agile principles, so here are some of principles that need to be followed to make a processes agile. So first principle is about customer satisfaction. So one need to satisfy the customer through early and quick delivery of the product. Now someone who is hungry, if you give them a water or a food immediately, a piece of bread, at least there is some satisfaction, there is some realization, yes I got it what I need, so energy is back. So it is very much required to ensure seeing things in a customer perspective and customer is satisfied. So customer satisfaction is not a result of the survey what I do. It's about how I deal with the consumer, what is that impact, the perceptions I'm building with the consumer, and what do I know about my customer? Do I really understand the pulse of my customer? How associated am I? How close am I? How am I collaborating with the customer? That will help you to understand how satisfied your customer is. It is very essential to consider customer satisfaction. And the second principle would be welcome change. So changing needs need to be addressed even late in the development process. So change can happen anytime. Now these changes should not become a challenge. So there should be a flexibility in your design itself which will bring in. So that is the reason I think when you move faster, so it doesn't mean that you eliminate or you just keep introducing the defects and move faster. No, that is not allowed. So whenever there is a change in the feature, whenever there is a change to some specific product functionality, accommodating that should become easier. Whatever the methodology I follow, that should help me in terms of accommodating. So I should be welcoming changes. It's okay for me to have the change. So that is not a challenge anymore for me. So principle 3, deliver frequently. So ensure software is delivered frequently, focusing on shorter time scales. As I was mentioning while discussing the manifesto point, like I keep creating a smaller piece of product modules so that I keep putting into the base model and integrating those. And ultimately, once all the features functionalities are integrated, we have a product with all the features and functionalities. So this needs to happen more frequently. So the release of those working piece should happen more frequently, more repeatedly, so that customer is seeing those working piece and experiencing and giving their feedbacks. So quick changes to those working piece, making that will become easier. Then work together. So when I say work together, it is very essential that developers and business individuals need to work together through the course of project, which means involvement of customers, involvement of suppliers, involvement of your own team. Everyone should work together. Each one should understand each other's perspective view. If there is no proper understanding about each other's perspective view, it is quite obvious what was expected, what was delivered would not match. So there should be correct understanding. To have that correct understanding, one should work together, collaborate. So they should speak, express, which is very important. So feedback has to be given by consumers regularly. Similarly, the organization who is doing the project should also keep giving the feedbacks to the suppliers to make necessary changes. And once it works together in a unison, I think that would help in terms of bringing out the results the way it is required. That would help customer to get the value. Motivated team. So projects need to build around motivated individuals and they must be trusted to get the job done. Means when will the team get motivated? When the work what they are doing is acknowledged. When the work what they are doing, the results are seen, experienced, and then feedback is given. There is an opportunity for learning and contribution. Their contribution is acknowledged. Only then team is motivated. When there is a motivated team, when team feels there is someone with whom they can look up to, it is quite obvious team will also come up with certain set of innovation in their mind, giving their feedback as well, involving themselves in terms of getting the results what is required. So it is always essential to ensure the team which is involved in creating the products is always motivated. So I think when we say team, the conflict also come across. There may be a clash between various different thoughts and preferences. So one cannot just shy away. Being a manager, one cannot shy away from it. He or she should involve, sit with the team, resolve those, put things in the right direction. So right interpersonal skills are very important here. Next, face-to-face interactions. So which helps in terms of most efficient means of communication, which helps in terms of giving a proper clarity in terms of what is required. So that I sent an email, I expect the person to do it. That is not the case what we're discussing about. So more and more interactions which should happen face to face so that each other understand what requires to be done. And there is a quick feedback which can happen when that particular interactions conversation which keeps happening. So one can understand other perspective view as well. Then working software, so it is a primarily the deliverable which you're speaking about, which has to come regularly. So more and more working piece as it comes. Customer can give feedback based on their experience on this working piece. Instead of just imagining something and then giving the feedback. So it should not look like an hypothesis or something which is in the dreamland. So I told something, the person who heard visualize something else. It should not end up that way. Instead of that, give the working piece, expect the consumer, the user to give the feedback so that it helps in terms of creating that particular product ultimately which is usable and which is going to create value to the consumers. So next is constant pace. So agile process promotes sustainable development. So it should not, I did it and I sleep. I did it and then I'm waiting for something else. No. There should be frequent deliverables which is happening. So there should be constant movement from left to right, from beginning to end, so that the deliverables which are expected keeps happening so that consumers or users are realizing the value of it. So it should be constant pace, the velocity, the speed which needs to be adopted. Then good design. Agility can be improved by focusing on technical excellence and good design. So when we say technical excellence and good design, it is very essential to understand insight towards what is the product being delivered, insight towards what is the technology being used, insight towards the processes, the capabilities, skills. So all this comes together when people sit together and focus on creating that product or services. So they are putting the effort towards designing it appropriately so that that will fit for purpose. So since things are moved step by step in terms of creating a working piece, the detailed designing of that small working piece would happen, which can happen quicker as well. And since these are going and fitting into the architecture, which is basically open architecture kind of scenarios, what we're speaking about. So all those modules what you create, you keep plugging into it. So that you are designing that small piece which quicker. So instead of designing the entire system as a whole in detail, you're just creating that small pieces and fitting into that architecture which is open. So pluggable. So that gives flexibility as well, and changes to the design will become easier if it's not working, and the agility helps in accomplishing that. Simplicity, the amount of work that's not being done needs to be minimized. Meaning, when we say simplicity, doesn't mean less, right? So the appropriate number of tasks, the minimum number of tasks which needs to be done, and mostly I think all non-value adding activities and processes would be removed. It has to be removed. So the more optimized, more simpler in terms of handling things is always good, so that only those what is required to be done are done. So it is very clearly visible and there will be clarity. Self-organization. So when we say self-organized teams, who is not capable of everything, but when you look at a team as a whole, each one has different skills, many skills, not one or two skills, many skills which they are complementing to each other. So they come together, they discuss together, they focus on the architectures, requirements and design and address it together. So team is also owning. The ownership is one thing when it comes to picture when we say team. So here, since team is actually taking up that ownership and organizing themselves to accomplish the results, the products, what is required. So then obviously the results will happen the way it is needed. And they will become accountable as a team. So they cannot have a blaming scenario where because of one or two members it is happening. They should collaborate better. They should be self-organizing what should happen. So next is reflect and adjust. So when are we going to reflect? Reflect upon what is that happening, learn, understand, keep learning it. Having a reflection to that what is happening means responding to that so that improvement can happen quicker. Effectiveness can be improved by the team regularly reflecting on it. So team is also understanding, team is also having that accountability to ensure that necessary adjustments, necessary actions are taken to make those changes and corrections quickly. So these are about 12 principles. So which helps that accomplishment of manifesto points, the four manifesto points what is mentioned. So keeping these four manifesto points, four values which is mentioned in manifesto, and then 12 principles. So keeping these in mind, any agile methodologies have their own approaches and they accomplish all of this. So further, let us look at some of the advantages what would be there when following agile. So we looked at the disadvantages what we have when we follow waterfall. So did we overcome those? The disadvantages what we had in waterfall, did we overcome that using agile? So what are the advantages of agile? So agile is helpful in terms of handling large amounts of interactions between client and project team because it is throwing lights on it. The importance of interactions, the importance of collaboration, the what is that self-organized teams. It is spoken more and more. Then improve transparency to clients in every phase of the project. How this transparency? Because customer is seeing those products. The products with features and functionalities are seen. They're experiencing it, and based on that, they're given the feedback. There is nothing something hidden. Like when I go with waterfall, till the end of the project, customer don't know what is going to come out as a whole. But here, since the working piece is given regularly, customer is seeing it, the users are using it and giving their feedback. So interactions increased. So visibility towards what we are creating a results is more, right? Then the delivery of the output is predictable and can sometimes be earlier than expected because we know what is being delivered. More and more clarity users are obtaining. At the same time, the team which is creating is obtaining. Because of it, the pulse of the customer, the directions are clear. Accommodating changes, which was a challenges in it was a big challenge in waterfall methodology, has become easier here. So then the cost of the project are predictable and follow a rigid schedule. So it is very easy to handle the schedules because more and more you interact and more iterations or in creation of small working piece of a product, working module of the product. So now as you progress in that, you understood the environment better, you understood the clients better, the customers better, the expectation better, and moving faster. So that will become easier for you. Now you have become predictable. You can predict easily what is that going to happen ultimately. So more and more visibility you start getting. So handling things will become easier. So then it allows for changes to refine and reprioritize the product backlog. So when I say product backlog, we need to understand the various different user stories what is written to deliver. So that is a list of deliverables, product backlog, what are there. Since we already know what are the things needs to be created, so this helps in terms of prioritizing those. changing the priorities based on the change scenario, and then taking the pace, taking the speed accordingly. The client can provide the priority of features, allowing the team to ensure maximum project value. So since it is visible, what are the user stories, what are the epics written, what is that order, priorities, order of priority what we have kept. Now the change scenario obviously tells us, do we really need to change this? Priority of which feature has to be done first. So that will become easier because you have the list, only changing that order in the list and then going forward accordingly. Integration is not an issue because we have the base model which can integrate all of this together with no issues. Now then by focusing on needs of the users, the team can deliver value to the customers. So users are involved more often. So user pulse is understood, what user requires is clearly understood. So delivering that value to the customer will become more easier and simpler. So then project is broken into smaller units with high quality development, testing and collaboration because you have that flexibility. So since you have better visibility, you can able to do this and you move one by one, iteration by iterations, you progress further. So those were the advantages of adopting Agile. Now, keeping that Agile manifesto and 12 principles of manifesto. So what are the types of typical Agile methodologies we would come across? So there are few which we are going to look at as part of it, which we need to know. So these Agile methodologies definitely considers the Agile manifesto points and then they demonstrate it in their own way. Now, Agile methodologies perspective, let us go one by one. So some of them to look at. The first one is XP, that is extreme programming. So this is the framework that enables teams to create high quality software and improves their quality of life. So it enables software development with appropriate engineering practices. So and then when is it applicable? So it is applicable to the scenario where changing software requirements to handle risks caused due to new technology while working with a small extended development team, to use technology to allow automated unit and functional tests. So that is about extreme programming. So next let us look at Kanban. So Kanban is a methodology which is used to design, manage and improve the flow of system. It is actually called as pull system, so visual system. So everything which is actually put on a board and it is visible to everyone, what work need to be done, what is in progress, who has to do, it is very clearly visible. So organizations can visualize their flow of work and the limiting their work in progress. So what is limiting, what is stopping is clearly visible. So generally, if I look at whenever, I'll just take a scenario of a meeting and minutes of meeting, which always discuss about it. Now, when there is a minutes of meeting shared with many people who have participated in the meeting, there are certain action items given to them. For example, now these action items will have a target date to complete, and accordingly, those needs to be closed. Now, when the next meeting happens, when you look at that action item status, majority of them are not addressed. What could be the reason? Is that people are not sensitive about answering or addressing those? So more than that, the prioritization changes. So one important thing we need to understand how Kanban works here is it is a visual system compared to that minutes of meeting which is not visible to us always. The Kanban board is visible to us always. So one which is visible to us always makes us put a conscious effort to close it because our name is indicated on the board. The work need to be completed is mentioned against our name. Then we need to take it up and then close it. So it pushes it. We will put a conscious effort because it is visible. And I cannot build any stories telling that why I did not do, why did I not consider this as a priority rather than consider something else as a priority. So this Kanban straight away addresses it. And then it's also called as pull system because people pull the work from it and then complete. Right. So where is this applicable? It can be used in situations where work arrives in an unpredictable fashion. So that means it gives a lot of flexibility in terms of adapting to the changes which are happening, the dynamics environment. So it is also used to deploy work immediately without waiting for other work items. So since it is visible, I think things can go smoother, easier, so that people are owning it rather than just disowning it. So now let us look at lean. So when we say lean, it is very important for us to understand that value is always in customer perspective and elimination of waste. These are the two things mainly spoken about. So lean is a set of tools and principles that aims to identify and remove waste to increase the speed of process development. It focuses on maximizing the value to the client, ensuring waste is minimized. So when you look at visualize a processes, process interfaces and the flow. So the interface certain way. So unless the output of one process or procedures getting into another process. So that flow should be smoother, like many pipes connected together and water is flowing. So let us assume series of pipes which is of around 1 feet in terms of diameter of each of the pipes. Water is flowing in between if you have a pipe which is of half a feet. Now what happens to the downstream after that half feet pipe? The entire capacity in the downstream, even though it has 1 feet diameter pipe, it leads to the waste, underutilized capacity, because this has become bottleneck. Now such bottlenecks, such the one which contributes to the waste has to be eliminated. That is very important. So value should be seen in the consumer perspective, and that value would happen only through the series, value streams. Then in this value stream, the identification of the constraints and bottlenecks and elimination of waste. Now what are the contributors of waste? So waiting time, more often changing things, moving from one place to another place, allowing defects to flow which leads towards a rework. So all this, likewise many things which actually end up in giving the waste. So one has to visualize, understand, realize what are those non-valuing activities and eliminating those is very important, right? So now when is it applicable? Lean principles apply to any sector where there is waste of any form. So it can be applied easily. So one is to know that. So that it should be effort which needs to be put with the objective to accomplish. So your ability to move faster, your ability to create that product which is more efficient. So only you can achieve it. The effective results can happen only when there is a lesser delays or lesser waste, non-valuing activities. That needs to be understood and eliminate those. So next, one of the popular methodology would be Scrum. So Scrum is a framework that is used by teams to establish a hypothesis, trying it out, reflect on the experience and adjust. It is used to enable teams to incorporate practices from other frameworks depending on the team's requirement. It's a simple framework which speaks about a product owner, a scrum master, a self-organizing team. So some of the terminologies what it uses is a sprint, daily scrum, product backlog, sprint backlog. So it's very essential to understand this framework. Simpler and able to adopt it is also very easy. When is it applicable? It is used when cross-functional teams are working on product development, when work is split into more than 2 to 4 week iterations. So these iterations are called as sprints, small time boxed iterations. So this will also help in terms of accomplishing the results, provides that flexibility and able to move faster. Then Crystal. So Crystal is an approach to the software development that focuses on people and their interactions rather than tools and processes. It is aimed to streamline processes and improve optimization. It works on principle that projects are unique and dynamic, each requiring its specific methods. So where is it applicable? It focuses on strengthening teams communication. It also focuses on continuous integration, active user involvement, and configurable processes. So these are the few agile methodologies which are there, which are more popular, more heard. However, we can come across many other methodologies like safe agile, which is a scaled scenario for more complex projects. So likewise, we have many methodologies which organizations adopt, and these are few for us to understand. So that's about understanding what is agile. Thank you so much for being here. Hope this particular tutorial helped you to understand the basic information required to know by a practitioner of agile. So thank you so much. Take care. So until then, we see you next time. Have a great time.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.